And once again, ladies and gentlemen, United Flight 1017 to Calgary is closing doors on
Attention, please.
to get
Please
to
do
the
not start jetting. Hold hand transmitters and landing to desk as a
We have started a journey last week on prayer. We started a journey last week on prayer. I look across the room, I see most of you here were here last week. If you weren't, I'm going to give you a little bit of a refresher. But we've started this whole idea on prayer, the most misunderstood thing in probably the entirety of spiritual walk. Like the most misunderstood thing. Who would agree is probably like, yeah, I probably think. Because most of you, when I say prayer, what do you think of? As I've heard someone say, asking my sky daddy for something. Some of you are like, I'm going to steal that. That's a bad idea, okay? Some of y'all are like, yeah, God takes Apple Pay now, boom. Last week we had a great little skit where Bryce tried to bribe God for prayer. I tithed, I gave my money. That means God listens to me more. Or some of you thought, no, if I just behave properly, then he listens to me more. And all of those thoughts are all based off the premise that prayer is me asking God to change something in the world that I don't like. Matter of fact, most of the time, if you Google and go to YouTube right now from people who are professing to know Christ to the nth degree, and you talk and you listen to any of their conversations on prayer, it is going to be based off of the singular paradigm, that singular structure of thought, which is prayer is asking God to come and change something in this world for me. And that is wrong. I guarantee you, I'd stake my life on it. I'd stake my wife's life on it first. No, I'm just kidding. I'd stake my kids' lives on it. I would stake my family's life on the understanding and idea that that is not what Jesus thought about prayer at all. I would stake it so far as to even say the early Christian church, before it got corrupt by all of us, people who were in complete dedication to the Spirit of God did not think of prayer like we think of prayer. And so we have to disassemble that idea completely and shove it aside, get rid of it, take it to the dump, and start fresh, because we've started our entire walk with God on the wrong foot. We've started the whole thing off out of syncopation, out of rhythm, and wondering why none of it's working. And it's because the very core fundamental pillar concept of communing with God is so off kilter that we start off on the wrong foot. Y'all ever watched? We have a diving board on our pool. And it's quite humorous to watch people who've never jumped off a diving board and stuff, or people who have and just, it's been a while. Amber alert. I'll let y'all answer that. So, to allow themselves to judge the space, have y'all ever watched it? To try to get which foot goes first. Y'all ever watch someone trying to learn to do a layup? I love basketball, and I was teaching my daughter last year. And what do you have to do? If y'all don't know, in basketball, there's a thing called a layup, and it is where you're going towards the goal, and you get 1, 2, jump. You get 2 steps, and you got to time it right. You got to be, and you got to know, when you go up on the right side of it, you don't go up with the other foot like this. You go up like this. Woohoo! Woohoo! Yeah, like Mario. And so you've got to learn to get started off on the right foot, because if you get started off on the wrong foot, what happens? You end up going. That was my version of dancing. So we've got to get started off on the right foot, and that's impossible when the very core fundamental of your relationship with God is defined incorrectly for you. And so that's what this journey is starting off doing, and then it's going to start replacing it with the right pattern, if you will, the right understanding. So now we're in rhythm. Has anyone ever done a three-legged race? Two people trying to act as one weird tripod, and two legs are tied together. And what do you have to do? Come on, we're gonna do a three-legged race if y'all don't. What do you have to do before hey, we'll start with this foot, right? And then we go up and you're communicating on what the rhythm is going to be moving forward. Because that is the only way to run the race. Otherwise, what happens? We're going to laugh at you falling. And so do you see the importance of taking prayer and saying, we are starting off on the wrong foot? It is no wonder we're wondering why all of this seems to be nonsense. No wonder why the church itself, people like you and me, are leaving the fundamental idea of running to God, because to us, running to God means asking God to do something. And then, even worse than that, the idea of an answer is God did what I said. This would be like this. Come on, put this on for size. I have kids. Who has children or has had children? Meaning they're no longer in your care. Some of you are like, they shouldn't be. No, okay. Yeah. This would be like me saying, hey, Jade. And Jade comes to me and says, Dad, yesterday he asked to go hang out with his friends at Target. So he's like, hey, can I go do this? And I said, no. And he goes, but you didn't answer me, Dad. And I said, no. And he said, you didn't answer me, Dad. That's how ludicrous we sound. Is it, does God answers prayers? What is it? That's an idea of prayer based off of I ask God for something only. False. We just talked about that, yes? Then the next thing we do is say an answer only can be what I want. And if he doesn't answer how I want, that just means God didn't answer it. Do you see how stupid we sound? No wonder why people of this world say, y'all don't even know what you believe. And then you say, God's in complete control. But then I'm also upset at him for not doing what I wanted him to do. Y'all think we're crazy. And not in the good way like Jesus said to be. We're crazy like lock you up in an insane asylum because nothing you say makes sense. But it's because we've got started off on the wrong foot. It's all based on this one idea. And if you don't believe me, try it out for the next 6 weeks that we're in this journey. Follow everything that we're talking about that the scripture says. Try it out and let's see what happens. Just give it a shot. What have you got to lose? 6 weeks of your life. Just try. The way you're doing life isn't working all that well. Is it? I don't know, a person in this room is like, you know what? I wouldn't ask God to change a thing. Right now, if I said, write down all the things you like about life, y'all would have a short list that could fit on one sheet of paper. If I said, now write down all the things you wish you could change. If we did the lottery game, y'all know what the lottery game is? What would y'all do if you won the mega lottery? We would be here for 4 hours talking through all the different, everybody's got all kinds of things they want to change. But it's all fundamental. So it ain't working out for you. It's all based in getting started off on the right foot with prayer. Not just asking God for things. Prayer is a bi-directional conversation. Prayer is fidelity. This word fidelity we don't use very often in our world. Moreover, the only way we do use it is sexual. Right? What do we mean when we say infidelity? We only think about sexual things. And parents, if you have children here, you can explain this after the fact. They're already talking about it at school, so you need to fix it anyways. We only mean it sexually, but let's ask ourselves why. Have we ever thought about that? Probably not. Let's back it up a little bit with fidelity real quick. Why do we only think sexually speaking as a whole? Well, because that's the most vulnerable, intimate thing you can encounter and do with another human being. Because if it wasn't, if being naked together and doing whatnots wasn't the most intimate, vulnerable thing that existed in this world, we would not be walking around with clothes on all the time. There would be no such thing as a nudist colony. The world would be nudist because it's like, I'm no more exposed or vulnerable or intimate with you, just chilling. Does it show you how? Because that's the only thing we know of in our natural world that says that's something like private, right? Like that so it's infidelity because it's only supposed to be with this other individual. The irony is that's what we still call it to this day in a world that says that's okay. They still say that's infidelity, but that would imply that you think there should be fidelity. That was for somebody because that has nothing to do with my notes. Okay, so infidelity. What does the word even mean? Let's define it real quick, because prayer is fidelity. Fidelity is like, think of it like this: dedication demonstrated repeatedly. Dedication, faithfulness, constant, consistent, being demonstrated repetitively, over and over and over again. So you have faithfulness, which is like, I'm faithful to this thing. And then fidelity is like the actual walking out of something you call faith or faithfulness or dedication. And it means now I am saying, yes, I am this, and I'm saying, and I believe that I am this, but fidelity is I'm actually going to do it, and I'm going to display it to the person, individual that I am committing myself to. I'm going to display it, and I'm going to do it repeatedly. That's what fidelity is. So when we say fidelity is prayer, we are saying, and prayer is fidelity, we are saying that fidelity with God is to display your dedication to Him repeatedly by having conversations with Him. Now, y'all want God to show His fidelity to you repeatedly by answering every question and everything you want Him to answer, and then He wants to require that of you, and you say, no, that is not how it works. But there's something that has happened that God has already showed ultimate fidelity. And we'll talk about that later. And last week when we were understanding this idea of prayer's fidelity, ripping away this idea of asking God for things and He answers me and all of this kind of stuff, when we walked through this thought, we saw a story in Scripture. It's commonly referred to as the woman caught in the act of adultery, and the story is of a woman who gets drug out into the streets, and in their law, it says, hey, she has infidelity in her life. It's not a hearsay. We straight up walked in and caught her, which I have a thought real quick. Just can we have some fun real quick? I'm going to. You may not. That's fine. I'm just wondering how the priest knew where she was and what she was doing. Like, how did he know that? Yeah, something weird's going on here. Okay, anyway, so. But she's caught infidelity. And they bring her out. And they say, all right, Jesus, gotcha. Let's see how what you say lines up to the law, right? That's what you're professing to be and know. And he says, all right, check it out. He says something to the effect of, all right, but if you haven't screwed up, if you haven't done this or something, anything outside the law, then you go for it, stone her. And what does they do? They had enough self-actualization to say, well, that's not true. You want to know why they had that? Because there's pieces of the very law that they were quoting that says what? It says, all of sin falls short of the glory of God. Paraphrased version. It says everyone is not going to, like, everyone's got this. So he quotes right back to them the very law that they're trying to enact. And where there was infidelity, what does Jesus do? When she looks up and she says, what just happened? I'm supposed to be dead by now. And Jesus says, no one's here judging you now. Where are they? She said, they're gone. He says, so I don't condemn you either. What I want you to do is what? Go and sin no more. Can we put that in a context of what we're talking about? Where there was infidelity, Jesus says, I know there was, but do you want to I'm calling you to fidelity. Where you didn't have what you're really wanting and desiring in life. Remember, we used the story of the notebook Great love story, and how it skips all the middle 40 some odd years of their relationship. It shows you the young love and the passion, and they go into the Target to hang out and all of this stuff. And then it jumps 40 years, 50 years down the road, and they're old and laying in the bed and they're dying together. It's like, it's so beautiful. That's what I want. But you want that? Peek under the hood of a relationship like that. It is intense fidelity. And that is what prayer is for us and God. Prayer is the most intimate thing that we can converse with God. Now, we use our lips and our minds because we're in a natural world. And so we use this example. And what does Jesus do? Where there was infidelity, he doesn't turn and say, I am sorry. Okay, because this is, we post these things, so I'm going to talk to the world real quick for a minute. I'm sorry the church screwed you up. Look, I looked right at the camera. We're going to zoom in on my face and be like, not really. It's too difficult to do editing-wise for me. So, okay. I am sorry that the world, not the church. It is the world calling itself the church has told you that the main thing you need to understand, this is off my notes, so someone listen to me. Remember when I talked about responding? This is going to be a response time here in a minute because this is not in my notes. I'm going off the rails. I got started off on the right foot. Now God's taking us downstream here, okay? I am sorry that you were told the most important way that you can know of God is to know what happens if you don't have him. The idea, this is off the cuff, this is for somebody. The whole idea is so, clean that up, Jared, okay. Messed up. It is so depraved to say the way that I can get you to serve goodness is to show you everything that's bad. It's to drag you over and rake you over the coals and say, do you know, I watched a video and it was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen for someone claiming to show the love of God. That someone says, why are you just telling us about hell? What is, literally, this is a non-believer, wow, saying, tell me what there is. Don't tell me what I got to go to if I don't do. What should I do? And his response was, I'm just giving you the warning of what happens if you don't believe. What literally in God's name is that, church? I can't even tell you what it is because I don't know. All I know is this is bad, don't do this. I can never describe something that is by something it is not. Christ walked out saying, where there's infidelity, I'm not here to condemn your infidelity. I'm not here to tell you how bad it is. You already know it is. That's why you're trying to hide it. This is why we put the chair so far back, because I'm spitting a lot. The world. You all know, right? We hide. You ain't got to tell a child. The best example of that is the cookie jar. It's an age-old idea, but so true. You ain't got to teach a kid to lie about stealing the cookies. They can have chocolate all over their face like Daniel did at my house the other night. And he says, is there chocolate on my face? And we're like, I don't know, maybe you're just actually growing a beard. I'm not really sure yet. A little bit of mustache going on here. And he wipes it off. We're like, nope, mustache gone. It was chocolate. They can have chocolate all over their face and say, did you eat the ice cream and the cookies? And they're going, no. So what good does it do? You know. You ain't got to tell someone that. And Christ said, I'm not coming because you know. He's saying, hey, I'm calling you up to fidelity. I'm calling you to live out a life that takes you to the thing you really want, the thing that you're searching for. You see how it sounds so old school, who's been to church before? And they're like, oh, that hole inside of you. And they make it so messed up sounding. And it's like, there's truth in there. But you're focusing on what I'm putting in there instead of saying, here's what's being called. Fidelity. And Jesus says, I'm not condemning you for where you were. He said, I'm just picking you up and saying, come with me in fidelity. Because what did he say? Go, walk the path. Get started off on the right foot of fidelity. And prayer is the pillar that puts us in that. Prayer is the fundamental. It is not asking the vending machine in the sky to spit out 2 Twix this time instead of the 1. It is not asking for a variable. If anything, hear this and write this down if you take notes. Prayer is not asking God to come and change things out there. Prayer is asking God to change things in here so I can be the change out there. That's what prayer is. We've twisted it because we don't want responsibility for the world's state of affairs, but that is our responsibility as human beings. And prayer is intended to say, God, come in here and fix the messed up. I am in infidelity. Come in here and fix all that stuff. And then let me be the change out there. Now, doesn't that sound opposite of what every church says? Now, my argument would be, and I'm not picking on specific names or anything like that. I'm just saying people that call themselves believers. Whoa. Let me tell you something, one more thing about fidelity. I ripped my page. Oh, no. Good thing I memorized it. Fidelity is a deep, focused thing. Infidelity can only happen in shallow relationships. It's supposed to be a relationship with God, yes? Pause. Oh, okay. Fidelity. A relationship with God. That's what this is supposed to be. Not a business transaction. A relationship with God. So infidelity can only happen if there's just shallow relationship. And what God is doing through Christ is saying, I want you to go to a deep, meaningful relationship. A deep, intimate one, just me and you, and a deep community one. And in the middle of that is social, shallow experience. And he says, what I want to do is call you deeper into true fidelity with me, and prayer is the mechanism. And so what better way to tear apart the true mission of God through Christ than to tear up the one mechanism that gets us to him, prayer. And when we look at the person of Jesus, what we see is someone that prays repetitively, without fail. Matter of fact, the last thing he was doing before they ripped him into the cells and to start beating him and doing all these things was praying. That was his thought, knowing they're coming after me. He knew they were coming after him because everybody told him. If you don't know, historically speaking, like the Romans were like, all right, Pharisees, let's go get him. Like everybody knew they're looking for Jesus. This dude is disturbing the peace. And he thought, you know what I should do there in this moment? Fidelity in prayer. You read the story of Jesus if you haven't ever done it. Every other time you see him, it says, and he went alone to pray. Then he did something. Then he went to pray. And it says, as was his custom. That's what he did. Prayer is fidelity, and we've mixed it all up. And if that is true, if this is true, it requires us to bond together in this prayer. It requires us to bond together with God and say, if God is who he says he is, if Christ is who he says, if that is the case, then what else can I do but just respond to that? No one on this planet would argue that there's a problem in the world, specifically a problem with humanity. And if there is a truth that there could be a solution to that problem, wouldn't we take it? And I'm here to tell you there's truth in it. And the path is to get out of infidelity, wishy-washy back and forth, and be pulled into fidelity. And prayer is the mechanism for that. Prayer is the response mechanism. Psalms 1, we read it last week right at the end. And it's a description of infidelity and fidelity. It's a description of hearing other conversations happening and starting to listen to them. That's what happened in the Garden of Eden. Mankind decided to start listening to another conversation. And Christ came and said, let me put you back in the one conversation. Fidelity. Let me put you back into that conversation, and I'll show you how to get started off on the right foot. And in Psalms it says this is what is being impressed upon humanity, is to say, meditate on it, replay it over and over and over again, say it out loud again. I'm gonna tell you something. I tell my wife I love you probably close to 10 times a day, if not more. And I'm not giving her any new information. She knows I love her. I tell my daughter, She does this all the time when she's on the stairs because it's the only time she's like close to my level. And she'll grab me on the back and say, I love you, Dad. That's not new information. I know that, but it hits me like it's brand new information. So when we're calling out to God, it's not new information. When he's calling out to us, it's not new information, but it hits us in differing ways. And Psalms is trying to tell us in chapter 1, fidelity is the difference. It says fidelity is kind of like this. It's kind of like if you're a tree and you plant yourself by the stream that brings forth the nutrients. That is like fidelity, being planted, immovable. And not just immovable where I'm at, that's called stubbornness. Immovable from where I ought to be, and I'm drawing from life-giving sources. Says that's fidelity. And Christ came and said, I'm not trying to, you know that you're planted elsewhere. You know, and the example they give is like the dirty stuff you don't want on the seed. It says it blows away here and there, just all over the place. He says, you don't want to be like that. You want to be planted in fidelity. And if this is true, prayer is the mechanism. Prayer is fidelity. And the good news is that Christ said, not only am I going to ensure that you can, I'm going to show you how to do it. Not only am I going to tell you you can do it, I'm going to do it with you. And so I ask you right now, if you're saying, wow, this is opening my idea of prayer, we're going to spend a moment in response right now with no hesitation. Come stand right here. We're going to pray together in fidelity. A simple prayer, albeit, but we're just going to say yes. If you want to stay right here, please do. If you want to sit down, feel free to. Life is full of patterns repeating. It's full of it. This morning, most of you did a pattern that is probably not undifferent than every other day. You woke up tired. You rolled over and hit that snooze for just another 10 minutes. Some of you are like, no, that's not me. I pop up. That's fine. But most of us, Ron, right? Ron sets probably 10 alarms, 1 per minute to make sure he's up. I know that because I do that too. You woke up tired. You rolled out of bed, went and got coffee, or got in the shower, remembered you didn't brush your teeth the night before. It's the truth, guys. You take a shower, you get dressed, throw on clothes, look in the mirror, fix the stuff, adjusting things, getting ready, the same thing you do every day, but yet you still call it valuable. The things you repeat every day are the things that you actually find the most valuable. For instance, one of the things you will do every day is eat at some point. Even people said, I haven't ate all day. Most of the time, they have still nibbled on something. I haven't drank water all day. Guess what they do? Pass smooth out. Why? Because the things that we actually believe and know are valuable are things that we tend to repeat over and over again because they are what actually sustain life. You eating every day sustains your existence. You drinking water every day sustains your existence. You getting up, clothing yourself, bathing yourself sustains your ability to converse within our society. Because if not, what happens? No one wants to hang around your BO. This ain't Britain. Teeth need to be brushed. And so you know it sustains the community that you want to be a part of. Are you hearing that? You do these things, you get dressed, you behave in a certain manner. You have things in your life like internet and smartphones. I'm not against these things, I have them too. We use them here. You use these things because they are required to repetitively have and use every day to be a part of a community that requires that for conversing. And see, there is a community, God's community, that is asking people to become a part of this community. And he says, here's how we communicate: prayer. And it is a thing in which, like a pattern of everything else in life, that is supposed to be involved in it. But so quickly, something that is extremely valuable, that we repeat every day, we end up doing it without attaching the real value behind it. And so it gets twisted. Like eating, the value behind it was to be sustaining. But in our world, that's not why we do it anymore. We do it for taste, for pleasure, for flavor. And so something that still can sustain you has now actually become the thing that creates the most heart disease in our country. Why? Because something that sustains you, that was meant to be done repetitively, got twisted and shifted into a different purpose and a different use. And so now the real thing behind it is completely detached. Prayer is no different. It just looks differently. See, prayer, the real purpose behind it got detached, and we twisted it into our own desires. And then what actually ended up happening with prayer is now we just call it a ritual. Something that you just must do because we don't understand the value behind it. And so it rolls off of our lips as easy as a hello, but yet it is the most sustaining, sacred thing that there is. But see, patterns and repetition get dull very quickly, don't they? The irony is, just to show you your heart needs some correction, the irony is we all say that, but then hate change when it happens. We are fickle creatures. We sit and complain about the same old, but then when something edges us out of our comfort zone, the thing we said we wanted, what does it do? We get upset and want to go back to the same old. And that is because pattern in these things became ritual versus something else that we have called rhythm. Now, some of you may say, I ain't got rhythm. And I'm going to do this, and I aren't going to understand it, see, because there's intense passion. This is the God we serve. Just real quick, can we hit pause? Pause. The God we serve is crazy. He can be working on multiple levels because I'm about to do something that I know he told me to do that is humorous and funny, but yet there's an intense, real, and passion here. And he's like, I can work on all those levels simultaneously. That is crazy. Unpause. There's something else we have called rhythm. Who's ever been like, man, I want to play music, but never have? Like, so you never played like an instrument. Who's like drums, just, and you're like, man, I wish I could do that. Mike, come here. Come here, Mike, come on. I'm going to show you something. See, because pattern and ritual is just repetitive, but rhythm is the same thing. See, what rhythm is supposed to be is something in perfect syncopated timing with a specific pattern that creates. All right, Mike, get on them drums and give me a beat. I just want to hear boom, I just want to get a beat. Just get us a little bit of rhythm. Yeah, you got to keep going. We got to get into the timing of it. Now, as he just did that, could anybody catch a rhythm with that? Was there a pattern in there? Now, Jonathan, can you give me a beat? Drop the bass. Okay. Now, Jonathan, see, before you play, Jonathan, what is the difference in Mike and Jonathan besides age and knees? Experience is a word we use for it, but it slightly misses the point. Because equally speaking, Mike's probably had more experience in music than Jonathan has. He's lived longer, he's heard it longer. He's had experience in it. Do y'all see this? This is all about prayer. But Jonathan hasn't had experience around it and listened to it. He's had experience doing it. Not just hearing the music, not just knowing what the rhythm is supposed to be, but can't create it. He's actually spent time saying, I see the rhythm, I know the rhythm, and I want to create the rhythm. So I will sit down, push everything else aside. That's why most people never learn music, is because it takes so much freaking time. And music is boring at the beginning. It is so boring. You just do, play me the basic beat of all beats, Jonathan. Nothing fancy, just closed hi-hat, just. You gotta do this for like 6 months, every single day. Hey! See, immediately all of you start going, you can't help it. Why? Keep playing, Jonathan. Because rhythm creates flow. And the something that was repetitious carries you somewhere. But that took Jonathan, some of the best musicians I know, spending hours every day for weeks just to play that. And then what you do is add a cymbal and now. Whoa! And that takes another couple weeks, hours every day. And then we say, now, give me your roll, 2, 3, 4. Oh, whoa, another week, 2 weeks, hours every day. Now I need me a little double bass. Backbeat it. Okay, now it's something different. Guess what he had to do? Start all over when he learned that new beat. See, that's how it works with music real quick. I know some of you are like, I don't get music. I'm teaching you music. You're like, someone's gonna go out and be like, I'm buying drums, I'm doing it tomorrow. Remember I said hours every day for weeks and months on end. Because see, when he started that new beat, guess what he had to do? He had to start all the way over as if it had never been done before to create new rhythm. Thank you, Jonathan. Now we can keep going with this analogy because then you learn how to do rolls and other beats and then you got to learn to play with someone else. Oh man, that gets complicated. Some of the best musicians that I've ever met suck playing with a band because all they've ever done is play with headphones on and their timing's all over the place. They just overplay everybody. And some of the best musicians that you know of, some people may know of a guy named Buddy Rich. No one knows Buddy Rich? Buddy Rich was a phenomenal jazz drummer, and he transcended jazz and played everywhere. And the things that, they were like, Buddy Rich is playing, and when you hear him go crazy, it's like, whoa, that's crazy. But when you hear him just play, he's just playing basic stuff, and they're like, man, he's amazing. Because he just knows how to take the rhythm he's developed personally and apply it with a larger group. This is prayer. We try to start it reverse, as if I was to take Mike this morning and throw him up there with that song that I gave them literally 2 minutes. I purposely, guys, the band this morning, I purposely came in here and told them a song that is complicated to play, that none of them have ever played, except for Jonathan and Ron, and that was 10 years ago. And I said, play this song. And they're like, we don't even know the words. I'm like, someone sing it. And I left, and they're like, ah! Weren't y'all? That would be like me saying, all right, but let's play. I won't let the rocks cry out in my place. We know that song. We've been singing that one for almost 10 years, okay? And then I was like, Mike, play the drums on that song. He's heard it. He knows the song, but he hasn't physically done it, so he can't replicate rhythm and flow. This is prayer in a believer's life. We've got it reversed because we tell them, join the band, join the church, pray with us. And they're like, I don't know what to do. I've never done this on my own. I've never created rhythm. I only know the pattern you've talked about, but I've never done it. I've been around it. I've heard it, but I don't know what it is. And then the crazy thing is all you've ever actually heard was Mike playing the drums anyways, because he doesn't have rhythm and know. So what you think you know of rhythm and you've heard is actually skewed. We've started off on the wrong foot. We're out of timing. And God right now in this journey with prayer is saying, let's start off on the right foot. Let's get the rhythm going. Let's put it back and let's learn from step one. This hand goes. How long? Forever. It never stops. How long do I got to do this till you can do it in perfect timing and don't skip a beat? Okay, now what do I do? Add in a foot. I can't keep my hand still. Yep, all right, just go back to the hand. Now add the foot. I did it. Do it again. Okay, start over. Did y'all see this? When I watch our teachers teaching these young children how to write their ABCs, apparently I've been told recently, I went to kindergarten the first day, came back, said, learn my ABCs. I ain't got to go to school no more, I'm done. But what do? They draw the two lines and the dotted line in the middle, yeah? And then there's an A pre-written on the paper. And then it's dotted lines of A's after that, yeah? Some of you are like, this is why I can't write. No one ever did that for me. And what do? Here's the picture. Here's how it works. Now replicate it. Draw it. Did it, Miss Sharon? Do it again. But I just did it. Do it again. Why? Because if I remove the template, remove the paper, and give you a blank one and say write on it, what does an A look like? I don't have anything to write on. I don't want to write in your book. An A looks like this. If you can see that. And they're like, it's an A! And you're like, no, it ain't. Why? Because the template was removed and I haven't done it enough to know how to create a rhythm to it. Prayer is fidelity, putting it on repetitious display. And we have to start somewhere with some templates sometimes. Before a drummer or a guitarist can ever write their own music, the things that move you to your very core, before they can ever do that, they've got to play something someone else has already played. They've got to start somewhere someone else. Before some of the greatest authors of all time, my personal favorite, C.S. Lewis. Before he learned to write so prolifically that I read 5 pages of his book and put it down and said, all right, I'm going to have to think about that for the next 6 months because I'm a redneck. Before he could do that, he had to trace an A repetitively and then learn years and decades of learning the language, understanding before he could say, now, from within me comes all. Before a drummer can make up his own beat, before a guitarist can write his own song. This is prayer, guys. It's a rhythm of life that we have to practice personally first before we can ever hope for what we typically call corporate group prayer. Has everyone ever wondered this? Who's ever been to a church before? You all have to raise your hand because you're here right now. And who's ever heard a church call a prayer meeting? And who's ever been to a prayer meeting? And as soon as the person stops praying, what happens? Crickets. Why? 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 Reset the vocal cord there. Why? Because there is no fidelity, rhythm in their own personal life. No rhythm. I've never had to make a beat on my own. I've never had to write my own sentence. I've never even looked at the tracing and tried to trace out another. I'm just thrown into a community that is saying, here's how we communicate. Let's do it. But prayer is fidelity. And Christ calls us to this fidelity. And then he says, this creates the rhythm of your life. Now, this is because God is relational. This idea wouldn't work in your business transaction version of prayer and God. Because a business transaction, I ain't got to know. All I got is someone just gives me a template, I check the checkbox, I sign the form, I put the form in there, and I rinse and repeat that. Oh, it sounds like rhythm, but it's not. Because it engages nothing of your mind. Who's ever worked or currently works a job that requires really nothing of you? I hired a guy one time, who his prior job, this was back when I had my company of doing installation of networks and all kinds of stuff like that. And when I asked him his prior job, he said he worked at an airport. I was like, cool. Then he told me what he did at this private airport. He watched Netflix all day. And then every once in a while, a private jet would show up. He had to go out there and grab the bags and take them to the front and put them in the car and go sit back down at the desk and watch Netflix. Does anyone guess he didn't work out getting in attics at 120 degrees? Why? It required nothing of him. And so when something said, rise, dedicate, I said, no thank you. That's the call of Christ. He says, I call you out of infidelity to fidelity, to this rhythm of life and prayer that is actually the thing you really want. It's actually that ending relationship like in the Notebook. That's what it actually is. But we sit and say, if it engages, it costs that much. Fidelity does. See, because God is relational, fidelity is the only way it works. It's the only way it works. It's the only way a relationship works. This can apply to every single one of your real relationships, not your social friends. Oh, I'm getting on it and I wasn't going to get on it. But see, our life, everything about our culture speaks in social terms. It's social. It's shallow. It's surface. It's here. And you're actually even told, don't let it get that far. Don't talk about your beliefs. That gets uncomfortable. It gets too deep. Let's stay here. Don't talk about, don't go hang out. Don't let those church people hang out with those people because that may cause an issue because it's going to cause us to have to go deeper into where we think and what we do and who we are. Stay in the social shallows. And Christ says, the only reason I cross the shallows is to grab people out and bring them in my wake into deeper waters, into deeper fidelity. And in every single one of your real relationships, that's how a relationship works. I just gave you marriage advice with this whole idea of rhythm. Do relationships happen by osmosis? No. There is planning. You think about a wedding. To even start the thing that is supposed to be fidelity, there is an intense amount of planning, thought, effort, energy. And so what makes us think that a relationship with God would be any different? And he says, I want to converse with you. And he's given us templates, just like the A. Just like the A. I didn't think I was going to talk this long, but here I am. Psalms is like our sheet, line, dot, dot, dot. Here's an A. Now trace it. Again. Now, take that A. Let's learn B. Again. Now let's learn C. Again. Some of y'all are wondering, he's going to do the whole alphabet. That's the type of reckless fidelity that Christ asks for. He said, because that's what I've done. That's the fidelity he's already given us. Woo! Think about this for a split second. The being and the mind that created the idea of an invented existence stood at the beginning of time, seeing all of our potential betrayals, all of that, and said, again, forgive, again, forgive, again, forgive. Ooh, watch me, again. That's the end of the stage. He said, from the beginning, he said, I'll forgive. Again, my fidelity reigns. I forgive again, my fidelity reigns. Hey, are y'all catching this? He's saying, hey, humanity, do you see it? Forgive again. His reckless fidelity is why he requires it in return, not because he's trying to lord it over you and say, I am God, so you better obey. He's saying, hey man, I want to have a deep, meaningful, rhythmatic relationship with you. The thing that you actually desire and strive for, and all of your physical relationships are just the shadow of it. Not the real thing itself. They're just casting a shadow of what the real thing is. Y'all seeing that? That's what all your physical relationships are. He's saying that's what you're desiring, but it's really me. That's just the shadow of what is real. And he says, again and again, I'm there. And I want fidelity because that's what I've given you. And I use this example, and I know, but it's all you get. That would be like on our wedding day when Taryn and I were standing here, and right before they said it, y'all think I'm going to use a TV analogy? No. I'm going to say, hold up, I get Fridays off. I'm a bachelor Friday night, yeah? Yeah. I ain't a father on Saturday, right? That's dad's time to go hang out with the boys, yeah? Yeah. You get Mondays off, Mondays don't work for me. I need you Monday and Wednesday because, oh yeah, it's business time. That would be the most ludicrous wedding. If you ever go to one like that, get up and walk out because that ain't a wedding. That is friends that you think are benefiting each other, but they ain't. We would think that is ludicrous, but yet that's exactly what we do with God. He stands and has from the dawn of time, committing constantly with fidelity to humanity. And he says, I'm here. All you got to do is say yes, but all I need is fidelity in return. And we say, all right, I give you some fidelity. Guess what? There's no gray. It's fidelity or infidelity. It is displaying constant dedication or none at all. And we wouldn't allow that between us in the most intimate relationship we have called marriage. What makes us think that that is permissible? Not permissible because of a legislation like a rule like that, but permissible because that's not the proper response to that kind of love. We would look, that's me getting frustrated and figuring out how to say what I'm trying to say. We would look, I'm just going to say how I said it. We would look at a man that treated a woman like that and call him dirt and trash. We would look at a woman and say slut. Wouldn't we? Even in our society that says do it, we still somehow, something in us says, but don't do it like that. Like, what do we all say? Why even get married if that's what you, right? Or why do we use all of these terms? Where do you think you got that from? Because inside of you, you know there's a fidelity that is intended, and these relationships are just shadows of the real thing. And Christ came and said, I am asking you to step up out of infidelity. Step into fidelity with me. But there's got to be a rhythm. And see, the difference in just a pattern and a rhythm is rhythms take you places. Right now, there's a song in every one of you that if I sang it, if I knew what song was down in there, it would take you to a place. It'd take you to a time. When Taryn and I were dating, there's a song that comes on. She loved this song at the time. I don't know if she still does. I never liked the song, but it does remind me of something I like. Strawberry wine. Many of you know that song. She played that song on her boombox with speakers this big. She already blew out the speakers in her car. And that song, when I hear it, I imagine, I see the boombox. I see her room with all the crazy colors that she tried to do in my house. I see all of that because the rhythm took me back somewhere. Y'all think I'm teaching about music, I'm teaching about prayer. That's why there's rhythms of prayer. See, in the early church, in ancient Judaism, they had a rhythm of prayer. This rhythm of prayer was morning, noon, and night. And it was 3 different prayers that you said repeatedly. Every single day, without fail. And those rhythms of prayer were intended to get you started off on the right foot and then move you into a new thought for the rest of the day, and then end your day settling in on a thought. Just like a song takes you from the intro, and then the drums get louder, pianos come in, and it swells, and it gets big, and then it goes and boom, and you get into that new groove. And then my favorite part of almost every song, the bridge at the end. See, rhythms have movements that take you places. And it is time that prayer stops being a moment of prayer and starts to become a movement in prayer. That this movement of rhythm in prayer shifts and takes me to the next step. See, in the early church, in early ancient Jewish times, they said this morning prayer, and here's how it worked. You're laying down in your bed, just like this right here, and that alarm goes off. Snooze, Ron. But what happens is as I get up, before I get up and do any action, before I stand, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and I'm going to say this prayer. And when I say this prayer, it's starting my day off. Before I do a thing, before I invoke my legs to walk throughout my day, my path will be reset by this prayer. And the prayer went something like this. It should be on the screen. This is a rough English translation. It says, thank you, Adonai. You have restored my soul within me. Endless is your love. Great is your faithfulness. Thank you, Adonai, for the breath that renews my body and spirit. First thing you do before your feet hit the ground, and it starts the day off saying, this is where I live. Then that would carry you into your afternoon prayer time. And the afternoon prayer time would shift. We would commonly call it a prayer for the lost, or a prayer of Shema. Listen and do what? Bringing the kingdom. And at afternoon time, it would shift and move you from I've lived all morning in thankfulness and thanking God for living again. And then in the afternoon, it says, God, you've allowed me to live again. You've put me back here again for another day. Thank you for that. Now, what can I do to show fidelity? And it moves us into looking at the lost. And then the ending day, prayer returns to thanks and praise and asks for dedication. And this rhythm carried. Now something happened in that rhythm. It became ritual. It became pattern and disconnected from the real thing itself, and it became something I must do because otherwise I'm not going to go to heaven. And it became this twisted, messed up thing. And the real fidelity, just like us eating food for taste and flavor, the real fidelity got stripped from it, and it just became a ritual to the point that right now, what we just did through reading the Psalms as a template for us, for most of us was like, well, that's weird. I don't need those words. I can pray to God in my own words. Oh, we even take it a step further. I don't need to go to church because of da-da-da-da-da. Okay, fine. I agree with you. You don't need church to know God, but do you? No. Do you stand in your home on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and worship and praise and thanks and pray without this place? Probably not. You don't do it with the place. We come in here during times of dedicated prayer, and we are the most infidelity people that you've ever met. We're thinking about what's going on, what bill needs to be paid. We're thinking about how that person ticked us off. We're standing beside someone that we're supposed to be in rhythm, playing as a band together in rhythm, and we're playing a different song because we don't like how they play. Time for the church. Those of us that are already professing believers, get a rhythm of prayer, a rhythm. And those of you that are saying, I ain't really been a part of that community, but there's something there. I haven't really seen a good representation of it. But there's something about that I'm seeing shadows of the real thing. Start off on the right foot. The rest of us are having to relearn. If that's you, start off on the right foot right now with fidelity of prayer, not to earn, but fidelity of prayer of a rhythm that teaches us how to move in life spiritually. And that's what Christ did. And so in this moment, I want to take another quick moment to think about this prayer rhythm, a morning, noon, and night, and this prayer specifically. Think about it within your own heart and say, what if I started doing that every morning? What if I wrote this down, or I put it on my screensaver of my phone, and what I started doing, whether I fully understand it or not, just like a child writing an A, they don't know what they're writing. They don't know what A means. They don't get it. Do they? But they're executing on it, and then they see it makes all the difference in the world. Think about this for a minute and say, what would happen if I shifted my rhythm of life just with one piece and said, I'm gonna start the day in this way and see what that begins to speak to me differently. Now remember, don't be dumb and think Monday, did it, ain't different. Because why? You just read the template. You ain't even started writing yet. So we're gonna take a moment reflecting on this for just a moment together. This is a time of response. If you want to come up, you can. If you want to sit, you can, because I understand some of you are writing it. But I want you to respond. If that's you, if anything I've said, it says, yes, fidelity, prayer, I'm starting to get it. I want you to respond however the Spirit is speaking to you. If that's writing it down, write it down. If that's coming here and bowing, if that's going there and praying, if you want to pray with a prayer person, do it. If you want to kneel right there where you're at, if you want to sit right there where you're at. But I don't want it to be just my response is nothing. That's not a response. A response is something. And I want you to take a moment and respond and think about what we've just talked about this rhythm. This is a prayer to create rhythmatic fidelity, a rhythm and flow. And the commitment you are making today is to move into fidelity. Not idealistic fidelity, actionable fidelity. The word in the Hebrew is shema, which means I have heard and I do. They are together. It's like you can't hear and not do. Like that's shema is like they happen together. Not doing because I'm earning, but doing because I've already got. And what we are going to do together as a band that doesn't know how to play together, because we're learning. And just heads up, there's no end point to this learning. Because it's a relationship, not a business transaction. There's no end to the contract. It is a till death do us part. And guess what God did? He's like, and if you do that, you don't die. You ever thought about that? He says, commit in fidelity to me. Marriage is kind of that idea. And in marriage, we say till death do us part. And he's like, yeah, that idea, except for you're going to just be with me forever. So there's no end to the contract. I know people who've been married for 40 years, 50 years, and they still finding out things about the other person. So in a relationship, there's no journey point to say, I've made it. It's always a learning. You're always learning how to be in fidelity. So don't let shame take hold. That was for someone. And it was someone right over there. So what we're going to do, there's no one that can pray this on you. Because why? Because prayer is your fidelity. Why do these examples keep coming to me? Prayer is your fidelity. It's your relationship. And I'm going to say it this weirdly. I ain't calling up Jeremy and being like, hey, Jeremy, can you take care of my fidelity in my marriage? Weirdest thing ever. Not only am I not cool with it, Taryn ain't cool with it, and Julie ain't cool with it. And neither are you, and it ain't even your relationship. So what makes you think your fidelity can be done by someone else? It's your fidelity. And today, we're going to pray with you, not for you. With you, simply standing beside you and saying, now you are going to pray your fidelity, and I'm just here to agree. What does that mean? Saying, God, yeah, we're gonna learn how to play together as a band in you. You set the tempo, God. You set the rhythm. You set the timing.